Hey, I am Dave from the Disc Golf Dyers Guild, and today I'm going to show you the gateway die that nearly everybody does their first die with this technique. The reason? It's super easy, and I'm going to show you step by step of how to do it. There's a few things that you're going to need. The first things that you're going to need are dye. So we have these 1 teaspoon sample packs of dye that you can get on the Dyers Guild website. Really, all you need is 1 or 2 colors, and the dye is in powdered form, and I'll explain that in a little bit. The other things that we're going to be needing is shaving cream. This is going to be what we're going to be putting the dye on, and make sure you get the foam shaving cream that is an aerosol, not the gel, and you'll see why in a bit of how that works. Other things is you're going to need a plate, pan, or something to put the shaving cream in. You'll need a disc. White is preferred because it's a nice blank canvas. You can work with colored, but then you have to use your color theory, but white disc is preferred, either blank or if you have a stamp, that's perfectly fine. You'll need cotton swabs. We're going to be using this to sprinkle the dye on top of the shaving cream. Some sort of giant popsicle stick if you have it. If not, basically what we want to do is some sort of device to smooth out the shaving cream as best as we can. Then we have some isopropyl alcohol. Now this isn't necessarily needed, but what we are going to be using this for is cleaning the disc, because we want to make sure the disc is nice and clean. You can also use soap and water if you want. During the manufacturing process, they have typically a release agent on the disc that the dye does not like to accept, so we want to make sure to wipe that clean, or if you're dyeing a used disc, to make sure to get all the dirt and grime off of that. And paper towel, I like to use a shop towel for that. Last but not least is a water mister. This isn't necessarily, but I'll explain why you may want this. I also have a Lazy Susan, so I can move the bed or plate around a little bit easier if I wanted to. The first thing that I'm going to be doing is cleaning the disc. So I like to use isopropyl alcohol because it's super quick and easy, and I just give it a quick wipe down. Isopropyl alcohol necessarily won't ruin your stamp, but don't scrub too hard because some stamps are very sensitive and you could accidentally wipe them if you wanted to keep them. If not, more than welcome to wipe the stamp with acetone if you would like, but isopropyl alcohol is probably the harshest solution that I would use on a disc that has a stamp. Again, you can use soap and water if you want to be very extra careful. Basically, just want to clean the surface off of any stuff that may be on there. We got our disc clean. Now we're going to take our shaving cream. What I like to do is I like to put about a fist-size blob onto the plate. I found that amount to work the best. Usually with shaving cream, you see the nice burst effects, and that is, in my mind, a good amount that when the disc gets smushed down, that it spreads out to get the nice streaking typically. And it's kind of hard because you have to have it somewhat vertical for the shaving cream to come out. If you have it sideways, you just get the aerosol. So I feel like that is a good amount, and what I'm going to be doing is smoothing it out and forming it into a cone/ball shape. Doesn't have to be perfect, but as close as you can get will work. And I try to keep it in the center, like so. What I'm doing right now is getting the form as best as I can. Then I will be smoothing it out after I get the basic cone-ish form. Now I'm gonna try to smooth it out as best as I can. The reason for smoothing it out is when we put the dye, we want to make sure that there's no voids that the air bubbles or dye may not get onto the disc. I just like to gently go over, you see it building up on the top, and I just put it back right on the bottom. Again, you don't need to be perfect because you'll be sitting here forever to get it perfect. You just want to make sure there's no major voids like that. Just like to go over the top real quick, like that. And I think we're good to go. That is all the shaving cream that you need. I'm gonna set my disc aside a little bit to make sure that we don't get any dye on there accidentally. Now that we have our mound, we're going to be taking our powder dye. You wanna make sure it's powder dye, not liquid dye for this specific technique, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be sprinkling the powder dye on top of the shaving cream mound. There are many ways and designs that you can do this, and it is completely limitless of how you want to do it. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be breaking this into quarter sections of pies. So I'm going to be doing one color on one quarter of the pie, then the opposite corner of the pie, then I'm doing the other color on the remaining quarter pies. What I like to do is I like to put the cotton swab into the dye and kind of shake out as much as possible, because a little dye will go a long way, and you can always reapply it as you go. So, and I like to get as close as I can and tap the cotton swab to shake off the powdered dye. And the closer you are to the shaving cream bed, the more control you have of where you want to place the actual dye. And like I said, a little goes a long way. You'll be surprised of how long a little dye goes. Now I'm going to do the opposite side. Again, putting the cotton swab into the powder dye and applying the dye to the shaving cream mound. Like I said, a little dye goes a long way, and these sample packs, these can last quite a bit of time. All right, so the colors that I have today are Sonic Blue and Blood Red, so it is blue and red. So I think I'm good for the blue. Next, I'm going to be doing the red. Same concept. I'm going to dip the cotton swab into the dye, shaking it off a little bit because it'll go a long way, especially with red. Red is really potent. Do the other quarter, and as you can see, again, not a whole lot of dye in here, and they'll show you in a second how to really see what it's going to look like. Just a little bit more. Just a smidge more. That is literally all the dye that I'm going to be putting on this mound for the shaving cream technique. Again, a little dye goes a long way. These sample packs can last you a good amount. This step is optional, but I find it helps out tremendously. You can let the dye sit on the shaving cream mound to absorb the water to help activate the dye to make sure that there's no dry spots on the dye that the dye won't accept on the disc. Or if you have some sort of water mister or squirt bottle, it will help tremendously to activate the dye. And I'm just going to give it a quick mist. And as you can see, the dye is becoming more vibrant and pop out a little bit more because the powder dye is absorbing that water to help activate that dye. You can let it sit for just a few more seconds if you want. Now we're going to be placing the disc on top of the die mound. There's a few ways you can do this. One, you can literally just rest it on top and have the weight of the disc sink down, and that will help create those burst effects. Or what I like to do is I like to press it down all the way, and while I'm pressing it down, I also like to spin the plate to get a nice swirling effect, and that is what I'm going to do with this. One of the reasons why I have the Lazy Susan is so I can easily do that technique. The other way you can do it is if you do have a record player, you can have the record player spin and put it down, and yeah. So I'm going to take my disc, make sure I can center it up as best as I can, and I'm just going to slowly place it down while spinning, trying to keep it centered as best as I can. And I'm going to keep pushing down all the way until the shaving cream pops up from the edges. Just like that. Now, you can let it sit for 12 to 24 hours depending on the plastic. So if you have Star-like plastic or MVP Neutron plastic, 12 hours will work, 24 hours could work as well. If you have harder plastic like Champion plastic, you definitely want to sit that longer. If you don't want to wait that long, heat is your friend. What I typically do is I stick this in a dehydrator. If you don't have a dehydrator, you can use a heat lamp or seed mats. Any form of heat really helps. I would highly recommend not using your oven for many, many reasons. One, you could forget it's in there, or someone would start the oven while you have that in there and your disc will melt. Two, you don't necessarily want to mix dye and food together. So highly recommend not using an oven. Yeah, just don't. So I typically like to use a dehydrator. The ideal temperature that you want to get is about 120 degrees Fahrenheit. You don't want to get hotter than that because that could potentially start warping the disc or changing it in ways that you do not want. And I let my disc sit in the dehydrator at 120 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 minutes. Then after that, I rinse it off and we're good to go. If you ever thought about disc dyeing and thought that it was too hard and not for you, I would highly, highly recommend trying the shaving cream technique. It is super easy with minimal effort as well as supplies. And we have everything you would need on the Dyers Guild website, mainly the powdered dye. And I would highly recommend getting the sample pack so you can try different colors to see what colors you like. And it is very, very affordable. So head to the Dyers Guild website to get all your supplies as well as other tutorials. And until next time, find your line, craft your piece. Bye.